Hi, I'm Brainerd Carey, and today I want to talk about patrons and sponsors for artists. This is something I've written about in my books, especially making it in the art world, but I've also given lectures and classes on this very topic. Patrons and sponsors means finding people, finding ways to get your art funded. It doesn't mean selling your art, it means getting funding so that you can make your art. No strings attached, money so that you can do what you want to do without worrying about who to sell it to, how to sell it to, what to price it, etc. So I've talked about this in a number of ways, but today I'm going to give three examples. The first is the direct method, writing emails to patrons and sponsors without meeting them. Second method is going to be talking about Kickstarter as a platform to do something similar. And the third method is an in-person method. So let's begin with the first method. This is a method that many artists have used. I've also used it and I've taught it, as I said, but it's a method that's been time tested. It's how museums raise money, it's how nonprofits raise money. And so artists can do the same thing. And in the course that I teach patrons and sponsors, I've seen artists raise over $200,000. And that means one artist raised $10,000 just to make a book. One artist raised $123,000 to do an installation. Another artist raised $17,000 to make a series of paintings. And again, what this means is money that you get beforehand. It doesn't mean the people who give you the money get your work or that there's some kind of strings attached. It literally means you are funded to do the work that you want to do. It's what artists used to have in the Renaissance and up to now, where people would sponsor them. They would give them money so they could continue to do their work. Because the arts in general often need funding. As you know, as an artist, it's not easy to survive and have a job and everything else as well as make art. So that's where patrons come in. They understand that artists need money and they're not looking for something other than the pleasure of giving money. So to begin with, there's the first method, which is direct emailing patrons and sponsors. So what that means is you write a letter that outlines what you're looking for, what your dream is. And that could be anything from a year of not working and only making art, or it could be, I want to make a book of my art, maybe a book of photographs, a book of paintings of yours, or something else. Or it could be another type of dream. I want to make an installation. I want to rent a place and do a kind of performance and massive interactive work. All of this takes money, right? So you outline your dream in a letter. And the dream should be outlined in such a way that it sounds exciting. It sounds, that you're enthusiastic about it. That's what should come across in the writing. So the way it should begin is, I want to tell you a little bit about a dream project of mine, and I hope you'll take an interest in this. And if you have any questions, just ask. Something like that. Then you outline what you want to do. Let's say it's taking a year off to make just art and nothing else, so you need rent and other expenses paid. Maybe that's 50,000, maybe it's more. Something like that is your goal, right? So you explain what you're going to do. And one thing that patrons, that people want to hear from artists is about their creative process, about what they're going to do. Because if it's one thing that people don't know who aren't artists, it's what artists do. Why do they do what they do? And how do they even decide what they're going to make? So you talk to them about it. You write that in the letter that I'm suggesting. This is a template letter. And I've also, written about just what those templates are, but I want to walk you through it now without having you read anything. So that template letter essentially outlines your dream. And outlining a dream is something that's really attractive to people because, as I said, they don't understand exactly how artists are working or dreaming. And it's pretty inspiring to hear an artist talk about their dream because typically people who aren't artists don't have dreams like that. They may have a dream of living somewhere, of going somewhere, but they don't have creative dreams. So a creative dream, like making a series of paintings, photographs, whatever it is for a year, is something really exciting for them to hear about. It's something that they've never heard before. And, or at least not the way you're saying it, because everybody has a different dream, right? So you begin writing that letter. You lay out that letter, explain what it is, and then at the end there's an ask, right? So let's say your ask is you want $50,000. That's what you're raising for a year of making art without having to worry about any bills. So then there's different categories at the end. Like every fundraising letter that you'd get from a museum, a nonprofit, or an individual, you have to outline different categories that they can give to. So one category could be $10, another 50, 100, 500, 1,000, something like that. You have it move up slowly so that each time that there's another increment, there's something that the donor gets. And again, they're not looking for art. They're not really looking for a big payback. But what should happen at different levels is there should be a greater sense of being involved and understanding what's happening in your studio. So let's say $10 is just updates constantly by email. $50 could be, you give a Zoom talk once a month to all the people that are at the $50 category, and you talk about the progress in your studio, what you're painting, what you're drawing, what you're sculpting, what you're taking photographs of, whatever it is. That brings people in a little more, right? It's not simply just an ask for money. You're telling them, I'm going to show you what's going on. I'm going to walk you through my studio a little bit. And again, it can just be like a 10-minute Zoom talk where you're like, hi, everybody, patrons, good to have you here. Maybe there's only 5, maybe there's 50. But for $50 a month, that's what they're getting. And again, you can be really creative with this. This is just an example. And $100 a month, you get the email, you get the Zoom talk, and then something else. Perhaps you do a video of an art exhibit that you see once a month or once every other month, and you walk them through that art exhibit. Not your work, someone else's work, what you think of the work. Because again, this is something that patrons want to learn. What is art about for the artist? Why does the artist make it? But also, how does the artist see? When artists talk about other art, about exhibits, it's very different than a curator or a docent walking you through an exhibit, right? Artists can be more quirky. They can tell you they like this painting, they don't like this painting, and why. So you can build categories like that. That's essentially the beginning of your letter, right? And you can be pretty creative with it. Then who do you send this letter to? Well, the first stage is something called donor prospecting. And this is what professionals use to find patrons and sponsors. They do donor prospecting. Donor prospecting means that you're trying to find out who the best people are that could fund your dream, right? And so who are those people? Well, you could start with family and friends. It's not, to overlook family and friends and think, oh no, I don't want to ask them. I don't want to ask them for a handout. It's not what you're asking them for. You're asking them if they want to be part of your dream. Do they want to be part of that? Everybody has the option to say no. But if you overlook family and friends, you've missed something big, because those are people who, in many cases, love you and want to support your dream. And when anybody lays out a dream, it's just natural. We want to encourage that dream. And what family member or friend could give $10 towards it? And how grateful would you feel for that, knowing that they're part of your journey? But then the other people you're prospecting for, the big donors, would be in local museums, local nonprofits, because what you do is, no matter what city you live in, if you can go to a museum that's within, let's say, half an hour or an hour driving from you, or other nonprofit spaces, what you can do is pick up any of the museum's brochures. And what you'll see is a list of names. They call them benefactors, angels, donors. It's literally a list of all the names of people who have given them money. And they list the names in order of how much money they've given, right? So if you've given a lot of money, you go at the top in whatever the category is called: angel, benefactor, partner. And then there's other categories as you move further down there, right? Those other categories means they've given less. Maybe instead of 10,000, they've given 5,000 or 1,000. All of those names are people. Let's say you're in a museum, an art museum. All of those names are possible patrons for you. All of those names are people who give money to the arts, who are interested in artists, who are interested in art. So consider writing down all those names and then looking them up. They all have foundations. That's how they give money. They don't just write checks from their own account. They have a foundation account that they write money from, and so they're all in public databases. You can look up their name. They all have a foundation. You can call up their foundation, and you can ask if you can send them an email, an inquiry. You're an artist, and you want to send them a letter about a project that you have. Could you do that? And usually your secretary answers of some type at any of these foundations, and they'll say sure or no, we don't accept letters. But most of them do, because that's what they like to do. They have all of this extra money that they're keeping in some kind of tax haven, and it's there to give out to artists. So that's one area. There's also theaters. There's also other art centers and nonprofits that similarly have donor listings. This, again, is the process of what's called prospecting for donors. You're looking for donors. You're looking to put together a list. And you could put together a list of 5, 10, 50, whatever you have time and energy for. But this stage is just the looking stage, right? You're just kind of checking things out. You're looking through these lists, and you're looking up their foundation. They all have one. And you're calling the foundation or writing to them and asking if you can send them an email. And it's either yes or no. So that's the beginning of your list. Then you send out that email. This is what we do in Praxis Center. This was the first class that I taught, and it was very exciting because on one level, it's hard to ask for money, right? You feel like it's a handout. You feel like you're charity or something, but that's not what this is. But psychologically, that's what happens. That's how artists think, that this is some kind of a handout. But that's not it. If you understand how donors think, how patrons think, it's that they are looking for artists to give money to because that's what gives them pleasure. They want to advance culture. They know that artists need money. And so they're in a position to give it to them. And that's why they give it. They're not thinking, oh, you're asking for a handout. Oh, look at this artist is asking for money. That's not what they're thinking. That's not why they're donors and patrons. They're donors and patrons because they're generous, but also because they have an excess of money that they need to give away, usually for tax purposes. So don't be held back by the psychological notion of, oh, I'm asking for a handout. Oh, this is, maybe they won't like what I'm doing. Because that's just not the case. So you write your letter, you send it out, and you have a place at the bottom of that letter where when you have those donor categories, what you should also have is a very simple way for them to pay. Not, here's my PayPal address, go there, put this in. Make it really simple for them to pay. Give them an address they can write a check to. Many of them do write checks. Give them an address for that, and also give them a link directly to PayPal that already has the amount filled in. So if there's a $10, $50, $100, $1,000, category, there should be a link right there to send them to that. So that's important. Make it real easy to give, and send a follow-up letter in a month if you haven't heard from them. And in a month, you've probably gotten some donations. You can say, hey, we're moving along towards my dream. I just wanted to remind you, since I hadn't heard from you, this is my letter. And if you have any questions or concerns, please reply. That's what you do. And maybe people will reply and also ask you more. People are busy. Letters often don't get prioritized. There aren't emergencies for a lot of people. So don't hesitate to follow up. This is the method, more or less, that Praxis members that I've worked with in the school that I direct online have raised thousands of dollars. Just laid it out for you. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. It takes a little bravery, but a little bravery goes a long way. And remember, this is what museums do. This is what nonprofits do. They're out there all the time sending letters. They're also meeting people and talking to people. but that's another method. I'm not asking you to do that. The other method, number 2, is Kickstarter. Kickstarter is not unlike the first method. And what I would suggest for starting on doing something like Kickstarter is going to Kickstarter and look at some art projects. Type in art and see, do I want to give to one of these projects? I mean, put yourself in the position of a donor, right? As you look through the art projects, you'll realize, that one looks interesting. Well, for $1, I could get this. Oh, this artist is offering this. Look at how they present themselves. In that case, there's a video that's like a trailer, either of the artist talking or some kind of a trailer about what they want to do, what they're looking for funding for. So watch the trailer and decide which one do you want to give money to. And maybe you don't give money to any. Maybe you give $1 to one or not another. I mean, many projects don't reach their funding goal, so you won't even spend that dollar if you don't, if they don't reach their funding goal. However, it'll give you a sense of what works, what people want to see, what what's attractive in terms of a Kickstarter project, because there's a lot of different things that are attractive there, right? It's the project itself, but also how it's presented. And Kickstarter, just like the letter I was talking to you about, also has different categories, right? $1, $10, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000. And all these categories essentially have some kind of perk with them. You'll get an email, you'll get a newsletter, you'll get your name, in a book that I'm making, something like that. Just to kind of, show that you care. And it's not like what they're looking for. They're looking, again, to fund something exciting, not to get their name somewhere. That's not what it's about. So that's the other method, right? And that's a pretty straightforward method, but you have to make a video and, and set that up a little bit. Not a hard thing to do, but the way to do it is to go to Kickstarter first and begin, just looking at art projects and seeing which one you would fund and thinking about why you would fund that. The third method is an in-person method. This is a method that museum directors use. This is a method that, big fundraisers use, which is to meet people. And you can do it in a few ways, depending on what city you're in. If there's a business group like a local chamber of commerce, you can join that and begin going to their meetups. And they're literally designed for businesses to meet each other and say to each other, what are you doing? And in your case, I'm an artist and I'm looking for patrons and sponsors. I'm developing a project to work or to sculpture or something like that. The other method is joining museums, local museums, paying for a membership beyond just the basic membership level, which maybe is $25 or $50. But then if you go a level up in most museums, $100 a year, $200, $500 a year, you start getting invited to exclusive events where basically there's wealthy people, benefactors from the museum. And in that case, you will be in small groups and you'll be one of the few artists there, and they'll take an interest in you. What do you do? Well, I'm an artist and I'm working on this and that. I also have a project, a dream that I'm working on. And if you'd like to hear about it, I'll send you something about it. Collect emails. Now that may take a little more, it does take more bravery, right? And that may be your thing or not, but that's the other method, the third method. So first method is writing out your dream. Very simple. I mean, it's not the simplest thing to do, right? But you know what you want. Take your time, think about it. With categories for giving, make it easy to give. Send it to, I told you how to do donor prospecting. Also send it to family and friends. As soon as the ball gets rolling, you have 50 or 500 or $1,000. It's pretty exciting, and that will give you energy to go further. Second method is Kickstarter. You begin by going to Kickstarter and just looking for projects that you like and art projects, and think about, why do you like this? It's the way they made their video, it's their humor, it's the art, what is it? And you could make one yourself that way. The third way is doing it in person, joining Chamber of Commerce events, joining museums at high-level memberships to get invited to exclusive groups. Those are the other methods. So that's all for now. If you're interested in learning more, below this video, there's a link to join my email list, so you'll get more from me, things like webinars about this topic that are free, as well as a link to join my mailing list, and a link to buy my book if you're interested in my book. But that's all for now. I wish you well. If you have any questions, ask. I'll do my best to answer all questions here. Otherwise, I wish you well with searching for patrons and sponsors and getting your dream funded. For now,